Greetings, people of the internet. This is my first ever YouTube video. You can tell, can't you? I'm recording this in response to the movie soundtracks tag Redux challenge by Miss 80s. Hi Beth. As also taken up by such channels as Retro Reels and Eric Woods from Cinematic Sound Radio. Hi guys. So the gist is that we're given a list of 20 questions as prompts to learn more about our soundtrack collections and tastes. A quick note on terminology before we get into it. When you say soundtrack, some people think of songs, albums, this sort of thing, and some people think of score albums, this sort of thing. Now I've got some of both and also sort of classical needle drop, but the majority of my collection is scores, so that's what you're going to see most of. So without further ado, let's get into the questions. Question 1. How many soundtracks do you own? Well, that's actually harder than you might think. Let's break it down. 2 or 3 soundtracks for books. Yes, such things really do exist. 2 or 3 for stage productions. 10 or so for video games. I'm not really a gamer, so they're only on the periphery of my awareness. About 60 for TV shows. A little over 100 compilation albums of one sort or another. And then the vast majority of my collection, as you can see here, is film soundtracks, of which there are something in the region of 2,100. And those break down by format into maybe 15 on cassette, 60 or so as digital downloads, a little over 200 on vinyl, and the remaining 1,800 or so on CD. Question 2. First soundtrack you ever bought? Well, you know, I can't remember. There is an argument for this. The Ghostbusters single by Ray Parker Jr., which was 1984, so I was 12. In terms of full albums, I was one of those uncool kids who was buying classical music albums in Woolworths. But it's hard to figure out what my first soundtrack album was. My best guess at the moment is that it was this, Who Framed Roger Rabbit by Alan Silvestri. I got that in February of 1989. Came with a full colour poster. I've still got that somewhere, but not here. So that's that. Question 3. Question 3. Most recent soundtrack added to your collection? Well, most recent of any sort was this CD of When Good Ghouls Go Bad by Christopher Gordon. And before that, most recent ones on vinyl were a couple of Miklos Rozsa compilation albums. Night Without Armour, Tribute to a Bad Man, Moonfleet, Double Indemnity, Lost for Life. Number 4. What's your most listened to soundtrack? Well, I think it's probably this. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, John Williams. Personally, I think it's the best of the Indiana Jones scores. Your mileage may vary, and that's fine. This is one of those few albums that not only can you recognise what it's from any track when it starts, you can always also recognise pretty much which track it is, and you know where you are in the film. It's just fabulous stuff. Now, Miss 80's original wording of this question was best opening song, so if we take it in that form of the question, then maybe Hooked on a Feeling from Guardians of the Galaxy, or possibly Born on the 4th of July, A Hard Rain is Gonna Fall. But if we take it as best opening score track, then you know it's hard to disagree with Eric Wood's choice of the theme from Superman. But an alternative possibility might be Henry Mancini's opening to Life Force. That's just fabulous and bombastic and just big. Question 6. Question 6 is your favourite soundtrack or score composer and your favourite score by them. Well, there are two fellas in my collection who are miles ahead of everybody else in terms of numbers, quantity of items that I've got. And those are Omar Trez, the maestro, John Williams, and the king, Jerry Goldsmith. For Williams, my favourites are probably, as I've already mentioned, Last Crusade, The Empire Strikes Back, Born on the 4th of July, but Jane Eyre is a classic, stone cold classic. If you're not familiar with it, you best go check that out. And in terms of Jerry Goldsmith, see, everybody likes Under Fire, that's a great one. One of my favourites is The Shadow, and you know, everybody knows you can't go wrong with the original Star Trek. All three parts of the Omen trilogy are spot on as well. Question 7, as originally given to us, is a movie that has a lackluster soundtrack. Now, a lot of people have been sidestepping this question. While we've all got some soundtracks in our collections that are a bit nah, there's no point in bad mouthing the people responsible for them. So I think instead it is a good place to insert our own alternative question, something we think is more interesting. Therefore, I'm going to go instead with soundtracks signed by the artist. I've got a handful of these, which include where is it? It's up here somewhere. I've got a handful of these, which include The Professor and the Madman, signed by Bear McCreary, and Loose, which is Barrow and Salisbury, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, John Scott, Sicario, Johan Johansson. Oops, where's that? There we are. Theatre of Blood, completely unreadable signature by Michael J. Lewis there. Klaus Schulze, Body Love. And the only one that I've got hanging up in a frame on the wall is The Reavers, because that's signed on the back by John Williams. And the only one that I've actually accosted the composer in person to get them to sign for me is Merchant of Venice, which is signed by the composer Jocelyn Pook. Question 8, a soundtrack that was way better than the movie. Cool, there are a lot of these. You could mention half of Jerry Goldsmith's back catalogue. I think the one that gets mentioned all the time on this question is, of course, Supergirl. You could also mention Elmer Bernstein's Wild Wild West. There's the original release and the expanded release for that. But I'm also going to mention Kenichiro Morioka's Message from Space. A very silly film. It's got a soundtrack that's got some sort of daft disco music on it, but also some very nice classical space rousing stuff. Check it out. I'll put a link There's a main theme called Brave Hero of Liabe, which is the best bit. I'll put a link to that under the video. And that leads me neatly on to question 9. Favourite artwork or jacket or coloured vinyl soundtrack? Well, I'm keeping this one here. That's just a lovely piece of airbrush art from the late 70s, I suppose. And it's got a 8-page insert booklet, which has got more lovely airbrush art in the middle of it. In terms of modern releases, well, Mondo do this sort of thing, don't they? So their gatefold edition of Hot Fuzz, which has got kind of artwork of the ammunition storeroom on the inside, and the point about that one for coloured vinyl would be what they called Crown Ale vinyl colour inside there. But the other one that I want to call out is Superman 2. Now, if you've got the original vinyl of this, you will know that the disc comes with laser etched Superman S logo on both sides, as well as the music. Let's see if the camera will pick that up. There, S logo, and again on the other side, which is rather funky. You know, don't know why they don't do that sort of thing more often. It's a really cool effect. Question 10 is a soundtrack that needs to be reissued or get a first time pressing on vinyl. Well, for reissue, think about the expansions in recent years. So many of John Williams' back catalogue, for example, E.T., Dracula, Monsignor, the Eiger Sanction, the Cowboys, they've all had expansions. But one of my favourites is Born on the 4th of July. And there's still, with the exception of a unofficial release, just the 25 minutes or so of score on side 2 of the original soundtrack after all the songs. It would be nice to get a new release of John Charles's The Quiet Earth. I haven't got anything to show you for that because I've only got it on digital download. And then there are Oscar winning scores that don't have a proper release at all. The thoroughly modern Millie soundtrack has got Andre Previn conducting and arranging all the songs and numbers, but has it got any of Elmer Bernstein's score on it? Nope. There's nothing of Dave Grusin's The Milagro Beanfield War, apart from shortish suites on compilation albums like this one. And then there are composers, significant composers, whose work just isn't out there at all. Think of Elizabeth Lutyens. She's got quite a decent body of her concert work released and available, but as far as film scores, the ones that she wrote for Hammer and Amicus, what is there? There's a 15-minute suite from The Skull on this compilation, and that's about it. And then a particular thing that keeps going around in my mind is Germaine Taillefer, who was a fairly significant part of 20th century French classical music, and she wrote a couple of dozen film scores, but I've no idea what they're like, whether they're really good, what the style is, because none of them have had any kind of release at all, which, given the recent welcome upsurge of interest in female composers, just seems a bit odd to me. You know. Well, many years ago, I went into my local library one day and found that they were selling off some old LPs. It looked like they just picked up the entire B section from their library and stuck them in a box, because it was mostly classical works, Bach's, Bach, Buxtehude. But in the middle of them was The Black Hole by John Barry for 50p. So I snapped that up. Absolutely welcome, really good score. There was also a period from maybe 10 years ago up to just before the pandemic, when charity shops, for you Americans and Canadians out there, that's thrift stores, were a really good place to find records and CDs and things really cheaply. They don't seem to have very many of them anymore. It's kind of tailed off. But that's where I found a copy of Yes Giorgio for £1. That's obviously got a lot of classical songs that Pavarotti will be singing on it, but it's also got some score items by Michael J. Lewis and a main theme, If We Were in Love, which is by John Williams. And similarly, in a charity shop, I picked up this 4-disc John Barry compilation. It's one of those City of Prague, Crouch End Chorus, Nick Rain re-recordings. As I say, it's 4 discs. The only thing that was wrong with it was that it had lost the front cover, but I managed to find a picture of that on the internet and print it off and replace it myself. And that 4 discs cost me 49p. Can't be bad, can it? A soundtrack that includes your favourite band or artist. Well, you may have gathered I'm not a huge pop music listener, I'll admit that, but I do have quite a comprehensive Art of Noise collection. So for this question it's going to be Dragnet. Ba-ba-dum-bum. I picked that one up in 1992 for £2.99. Question 13 is a soundtrack where an actor from the movie also performs a track on the album. Well, for this one I'm going to pick the Three Amigos. All 3 of the main actors, Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, Martin Short, they perform several of the songs on here. The songs are by Randy Newman. The score is by Elmer Bernstein in the style of his grand old Western scores. And both of them are clearly having great fun. So that's that one. Question 14. A soundtrack where a band or artist actually performed in the movie. Well, songs album people are obviously citing things like Huey Lewis and ZZ Top in the Back to the Future movies here, and score album kind of people have been mentioning Jerry Goldsmith's cameos in the Gremlins movies. So I want to try and do something different. How about Erich Korngold appearing as the conductor Hans Richter at the end of Magic Fire? Or similarly, Miklos Rozsa as a conductor in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. Question 15 is the last movie that you watched that you also have a soundtrack for. Well, the last thing I saw at the cinema was Dune. Rewatching old stuff on the telly. I'm part of a group on Twitter, Hello the Film Crowd. We've been rewatching old B movies and Hammer horror movies and also TV series, and most recently been rewatching the old Jeeves and Wooster series. So there's a really good jazzy main theme by Anne Dudley for that. Question 16 is a record store day soundtrack. I've got a bunch of these. What have we got? We've got John Wick, which was a Varese release by Tyler Bates and Joe Richard, which is on sort of gunmetal grey splatter vinyl. It's really nice to finally see The Keep by Tangerine Dream. Hurrah! After all these years. I've got a couple of Ennio Morricone's, Autopsy, also known as Sunspots, which was a big gatefold with lots of artwork on the inside of that, and there were 2 discs for that which were bright orange. And secondly by Morricone, Bluebeard, Barba Blue. So I've got the back of that there. There we are, there's the front of that. This was 499 copies. Doesn't tell me which number my one was, but there we are. And that is fairly predictably on transparent blue vinyl. What have we got? There's Varese did a 10-inch V-disc of Stephen Price. Terribly sorry, Michael and Stephen Price mixed up. Stephen Price's score for Fury. And then I think this is a silver screen. Yeah, Quatermass and the Pit by Tristram Carey, and that comes with a printed in a sleeve with kind of artwork, photographs on it, and some more black and white stills from the film. And there were 300 each of those on 4 different colours: red, yellow, green and blue. And the one I've got is the green one. In addition to those, there's a few singles, Record Store Day singles. Don't Look Now, Pino Donaggio. That was apparently a pressing of 1,000. I've got number 215. For Don't Look Now, it makes absolute sense that that is red. There's James Bernard's Nosferatu, which is, given his black and white movie, silver grey. It's sort of translucent. And then if you want very silly funky music from German sexploitation, you can have Gerhard Heinz Schamlos, which is also red. That's question 16. Are we nearly there yet? Yes, we are. Question 17, a soundtrack from the year you were born. See, I'm taking A and giving you several. It's no wonder it's taking so long. There's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by John Barrett. It's a nice gatefold with lots of stills from the film in that one. That would also do for that actors performing on the soundtrack, because Fiona Fullerton and Peter Sellers and Michael Hordern and so on, they're all singing some of the songs on that. What else have we got? Vangelis, L'Apocalypse des Animaux. This is a 2016 Polydor reissue in which the track lists, both on the labels of the disc and on the back cover of the album, are just completely mixed up. They're all wrong. So I typeset my own version and printed it out and slotted it in under the cellophane. So that's to put that right. How about Joseph Koo, Fist of Fury? This is one of a number of LPs in my collection, courtesy of my oldest friend Jeff at Fraught Productions. Thank you for those, Jeff. What else is there on CD? We've got The Man, Jerry Goldsmith, part of a twofer with Black Patch, which was a crowdfund on Kickstarter via Intrada. And the reason I'm mentioning it is I was one of the contributors. So if you've got that, you can open it up and see my name in the booklet right next to Austin Wintory's. What else have we got? There's obviously The Godfather and The Cowboys, and fairly obviously Dracula AD 1972, and other things, including a bunch of Jerry Fielding's scores, which are spread across these 3 compilation CDs: The Getaway, more various other bits and bobs. Question 18 is a soundtrack or score blind buy. by which I presume is meant something bought without any prior knowledge of the music. Well, back in the day I used to do a lot of that. I just pick up anything by Williams or Goldsmith or Polydorus or Cayman or Broughton, just because I knew those composers were good, and it's like, yeah, let's have that, see what it's like. There's too many to mention here. These days, of course, a lot of purchases are prompted by stuff heard on the radio or on some of the very good film music podcasts out there, and many of the websites will have options to preview tracks, so there's not so much of that anymore. How about the Internecine project by Roy Budd? This is a fairly recent, was it 2019 Trunk Records release. But then in terms of old releases of old records, how about the Yellow Rolls Royce, Riz Ortolani? That's really good. Question 19 is a soundtrack you own on multiple formats. I've got a number of things on both vinyl and CD, and a number of things on both cassette and CD, but I don't think I've got anything on all three. The items I've got most copies of are fairly predictably Star Wars. This is the original British 20th Century Fox gatefold. It's 2 discs. It's got the track list insert, and it's also got the poster. And this is one of those editions that, if you hold it up to the light, it's very slightly translucent dark purple. Apparently that's a thing. Then I've got the Polydor 2 CD box. Yeah, I think that was the one. That was the version that I bought first. Then, of course, that. Isn't that glorious? Some other people have mentioned this before. I've got this in a long since defunct local independent record shop. My town now does not have any independent record shops. It's in a sort of desert of independent record shops. Very odd. No independent bookshops either. This lovely big lush lavish booklet. Yeah, and this only cost me 37 quid, which is not bad for 4 discs, even if it wasn't in a special box. And then, of course, yes, that's in a rotten condition. The one with the holographic discs on it. Those were very nice. But the other thing, which is less predictable, perhaps, is Simon Boswell's Hardware, which I first bought on cassette. That's the Milan tape of that, and then I bought the Milan CD many years later, and for some reason there is some sort of track indexing error on this particular copy, which means that the tracks, oh, there's a nice sort of gold coloured one, the tracks play all out of sequence, and even if you rip it off to MP3 files, they still play all out of sequence. It's utterly bizarre. So then I bought the Varese version of the same album as well, which thankfully plays properly. I also bought the expanded 2 CD score version that Boswell put out himself under his Flick Records label, and I can't show you that because at the moment I can't quite find it, but hey ho. Question 20, a soundtrack that always lifts your mood. Well, I could mention Three Amigos again because that's great fun, or Airplane. While it would be nice to have a release that just gives us Bernstein's score so you can concentrate on the music, you can't help but enjoy the comedy here, no matter how many times you've heard it. Mel Brooks, John Morris soundtracks like The Producers and Silent Movie are good for this category as well. And then away from comedy, High Society is just fabulous music. This is the original 1950s release album. I think this was my dad's. You've also got stuff like Mark Shaman's Addams Family. It's good fun music. I've got what I got there: the original Capital and the expanded La La Land. There's, you know, sumptuous, rousing, melodic scores. Bruce Broughton's Young Sherlock Holmes. That on vinyl there. That was originally really hard to get hold of for years. I finally picked up in 1995 in the much missed, long lamented 58 Dean Street Records shop. For the benefit of Americans and Canadians who may be watching this, you'll hear 58 Dean Street mentioned a lot by British soundtrack collectors. It was just the go-to place. Look at that. I've got the carrier bag still. Yeah, of course, Young Sherlock Holmes eventually came out on CD and then on double CD and what have you, so it's much more accessible these days. What else always lifts your mood? E.T. always lifts your mood. James Horner's Rocketeer always lifts your mood. And the resolution and end title at the end of Close Encounters, it's just the sort of thing that could finish anything off on a high note. And finally, shout out to other channels that love soundtracks who might do a response to this. Well, do you think we can get Austin Wintory to have a go at this? I don't know, we'll try. Otherwise, I'll tag my mate Jeff, as mentioned earlier in the Fist of Fury item. So, Jeff, are you out there? Are you going to have a go at this? We'll see. Otherwise, ta-ra folks, I shall probably be doing the Varese challenge, because I've got an awful lot of their stuff. I'll start with the vinyl, because that'll be shorter and easier. Otherwise, see you there. Goodbye.